Hey guys, welcome back, and this is Maverick here with the finale of Assassin's Pride. So, the final episode, right? In the last episode, we got to a point where Merida's secret identity, if you will, her actually being a samurai class instead of a paladin class, was found out by Muru and Salasha, the other two members of the prominent houses of this land. And are they friend or are they foe? Salasha at the very least seems to be more on Merida's side. Muru a little bit more ambiguous, but it seems that she isn't entirely an antagonist as at least that's what she says anyways, right? So we have that situation to resolve. I do think that she's going to end up on Merida's side, considering, she is part of like the quartet and whatnot, but we shall see, right? And well, the final episodes, right? Honestly, this arc, as somewhat like the series as well, has been kind of a mess, right? It's all over the place, both in the animation and in the storyline, and there's a lot of missing gaps in between, let's just say. But at the very least, I do hope that this series can at least end with a bang. Maybe give us some nice character development, give us some nice action at the very end there, and perhaps even let us see Kufa and Merida fight side by side, both utilizing their samurai abilities, since Merida has nothing to hide. Right? So, let's see if this can turn out to be a good ending right now. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1... play. Okay. Talking to Marita. Alright, flashback. Memory. What? Alice in Wonderland? Oh, she's the cat. Cheshire cat. So who's the queen? Yeah, this is Alice in Wonderland. Oh, she's being judged by the royals. Alright. That's Salasha's brother, right? Sorry, Muru's brother? Actually, whose brother was him?
年もの間、フランドールの民を欺いてきた疑いがかけられている。無能才女め、これは許されざることです。その通り。しかし、彼女の罪もようやくつまびらかにされる時が来た。彼女の本当の父親を名乗る男が
Oh, that dude?
さらにここに被告人の血筋が不当であるという証明がある。
それは私の
名前メリダ・アンジェル。彼女の異界は
Samurai.
なんと侍。
やっぱりあの娘は私の異界が侍だからってお父様の娘ではない証拠にはならないわ。先生が教えてくれたもの。騎士公爵家の生まれでも上級異界を受け継げないことだってあるって。
確かにその通りだ。しかし僕にはどうしても解せないことがある。なぜ君はマナーを持たない無能才女だったのか。そしてなぜ13歳の今になって急にマナが
Well, that's none of your damn business.
それはなんだ。なぜ急にマナが発言したのだ。
あのことは誰にも知られちゃ。
見ろ、言い返せぬ。やはり後ろめたい事情があるのだ。
違うものですか。己でも分かっているのでしょう。無能才女と呼ばれていた自分は騎士公爵家にふさわしい人間ではないと。
これではっきりした。メギラ・アンジェルの父親はフェルグス公爵ではない。
全くいたたまれませんわ。お二人の婚姻にあたってフェルグス公がどれだけ各方面に東方清掃させられたか。その決心も裏切るなら
I mean, just whip out your sword and, like, fight your way out of this. Like, they don't even... They say it's being recorded, but they have no jurisdiction here. Like, I'm not really sure.
私は全部覚えてる。お母様は私とお父様を一途に愛してくださったわ。私が裏切りの子だなんてありえない。
ならどうしてマナーが。
それを私が証明するの。もっともっと強くなってクレストレギオンに入って国中のみんなが認めるようなアンジェル家の子供になってお父様とお母様の愛を証明してみせるの。リタ、私は絶対諦めたりしない。あなたたちなんかに負けるもんか。
Quite dramatic music, but I did like her
証明してみせるといい。
words there.
君が本当に騎士公爵家と並び立つのかどうかを。
サラシャさん、
行け、我が忠義の騎士ジャックよ。アンジェル家にはびこる欺瞞を暴いてみせろ。
できればこうなる前に
Alright, enough talk. Just fight her already. Like, come on, you already fought against Lita and the others before. Just fight her, jeez. It's not like you have to kill her.
この手で速やかに終わらせて差し上げます。それだけが私のプライド。ギャー！リタ！あまり抵抗しないでください。私はあなたの血を見たくない。優しいことに
Just defeat her already.
あんまり舐めない方がいいわ。ドラグーンの飛翔アビリティ、スプリンゲリンレイン。リタ、頑張っているようだけど残念。メリダちゃんには万に一つの勝ち目もないわ。ドラグーンクラスのサラちゃんに頭から抑え込まれているんだもの。パラディンクラスでもなく同じ年の公爵家霊障に圧倒的な大敗を喫したとなれば、もう彼女がアンジェル家の血筋だと信じる人なんていなくなるわ。あなたからは嘘つきの匂いがする。リタは私に自慢してたわ。とっても綺麗な子と知り合いになったんだって。特別な友達になれそうだって。
Like, this entire part is, like, underdeveloped.
嫌われちゃったわよね。それは本音。 メリダちゃんは大丈夫ね。あなた、リタが本当に好きなのね。あなたがリタを思ってリタを貶めるのなら、私はリタの背中からリタを支える。
For what?
私のプライド。
Alright.
ご覧になって、逃げ惑うしかできないあの無様な姿。
腐ったマナコにはあれが優勢に映るのか。
うん。
一体誰だ、あの少女を教育している者は。
Alright, looks like he's... Haha, that was a feint! Nice!
空へは逃がさない。聞きなさい、あなたたち。
Hey, at the end of the day, power is everything.
侍クラスであることに誇りを持っているわ。侍だったから立ち上がることができたし、追いつきたい背中があるから前に進む勇気が出せる。私は私で、私のままで。
This background music is really a little bit too epic for
アンジェル家のパラディンよ。
this scene. for the fight that just happened there.
もしですよ。メリダ城は本当にフェルグス港のご息女で、マナの目覚めや異界の違いは単なる不幸に過ぎなかった場合、我々はとんでもない反逆行為を行っていることになるのでは。
一旦追い込まれるとまるで役に立たないな。ここでの出来事はなかったことにしようか。
Oh? What?
あれは
So everything's just erased? What?
何なのあれ。オルタナイトの万年筆。魔法書の効果を書き換えるっていう規格外の超希少品。なんでサラちゃんがそんなものを。
I mean, I don't think they're going to die, right? It's just rewriting.
私たちはマナ能力者なのよ。メリダちゃんの言う通りね。お遊戯はここまで。はい。
I'm... never mind.
皆さん早く扉の向こうへ。 オセローさん。
私は
Just go.
早く逃げてください。オセローさんがお屋敷に帰らないとエリーが困ります。 急いで、私たちも。
Ooh.
さあさあ、美しきプリンセスたち。そろそろおとぎ話のフィナーレといこうじゃないか。
Oh, it's this dude.
今の私の配役はメリダ・アンジェルの偽りの父親にあらず、完全なる純粋悪なのだよ。
やっぱり偽物。よくもリタを苦しめたな。
I wonder what class he is.
侵食。
そろそろ幕引きの時間だ。
Oh my god, this animation. Ah.
聞かせてごらん。乙女の絶望に満ちた悲鳴を。
Hey.
遅くなりました。メリダお嬢様。
So is he supposed to be the Mad Hatter?
いいえ、先生。私もみんなを守ります。
Right, so they're gonna fight together?
俺の生徒です。
Well, at least I got that right.
行きますよ、お嬢様。
来るのではないかと思っていたよ。メリダ・アンジェルの家庭教師。
興味がない。早く去れ。
Okay. Let me mute this. I don't want to get copyright struck. Well, at least that was cool. It's raining? Why? Ah, never mind. Don't question it. Ah, a quick kiss? No? Ah, alright. And I wonder what the other three were doing during all this time. Like, what caused her change? Oh my. Like, I know that she's going to end up on Marita's side, but could you, like, maybe explain this? Hello? Who's in charge of the script here?
そうみっともなく騒ぐなよ。公爵。物語の中とはいえ、死に目にあったんだから、そりゃ痛いだろう。お助けください、公爵。わかっているさ。お疲れ様。君に最後の役目をあげようと思ってね。無能才女の予想外の実力と決意、その家庭教師の手腕と隠された背景、僕にはまだやらなきゃいけないことがたくさんあるみたいだ。
Okay, whatever you say.
ロゼ先生、心配したよ。お怪我は大丈夫？大丈夫。
I mean, you guys were also fighting here, right?
メリダさん、
ご無事で何よりです。ご心配をおかけしました。
メリダさんもよくやったわ。はい。
Oh. Dad! Hmm?
後日、メリダお嬢様の本当の父親を名乗って何者かが新聞各社へ投書を行い、カーディナルズ楽教区を密かに震撼させた事件は、独自に調査を進めていたセルジュシクザール騎士公爵により解決される運びとなった。事件の容疑者はクレストレギオン所属の美獣ニーズ。この国のあり方に疑問を抱いた若きエリート騎士
Alright, so Fall Guy, right?
に及んだとされたが、現在行方をくらましており、真相は闇の中。前代未聞のクレストレギオンによる犯罪の後処理のため、軍団長フェルグス・アンジェル公爵はしばしメリダお嬢様のそばに滞在。
Hmm.
ほら、起きなさい。ありがとう。リータ。
What's with her now? Didn't they just say he was staying with her?
合格症にあったお前の言い解だが、曽祖母の代に侍クラスの縁者がいたような記憶があるかもしれん。
Huh.
メリノアによく似ている。
I didn't know it. Huh. So here's the great mystery. Is she or is she not actually of the House of Angels? Well, at least she was finally acknowledged by him. That's nice.
よかったですね、メリダお嬢様。
Didn't think so? There seems to be still a little bit more after this. Alright, let me fast forward this real quick. See you guys in a second. Alright, there is indeed a little bit left. Let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Opening ceremony? Oh, so they've increased by an year? They're great, I mean. Hi, kitty.
お前、先生と同じ色だね。ずっと一緒なんだね。
So are we gonna get some foreshadowing of some future events?
お嬢様、
No, it's Kufa, I'm married.
認定試験合格のご褒美として、私の
Oh yeah, they're supposed to go on a date, right? Something like that. Well, actually, he was supposed to grant one of her requests. But
私は見ていただきたいんです。残酷とも言えるこの世界で、いつの日か私が認められる瞬間を。そして預けるのではなく、私も先生に命をかけたい。
やはり。マイ・リトル・レイディ。
I mean, it's nice that she has this conviction and all. That dialogue, though, seriously.
私の唯一無二のアサシンズプライドだ。
Alright. You guys after this. Oh man. I think I have a headache right now. Am I glad this is over? Alright, I'm gonna do my best to at least be a bit more constructive about this, right? Like I said, I don't really like to roast animes just because. I don't think that's good for anyone, especially for people who do watch these kinds of videos. Typically, they're fans of a series, and that's why they would want to watch a reaction or a review such as this one. If you didn't like it in the first place, there's really you wouldn't want to waste your time on this, right? So, I feel bad for calling it out for in these videos, which normally only fans of of a series would watch, right? But still, let's try to be constructive about this and deconstruct all the things that went wrong. First from this episode, right? So, once again, in this arc, the characters are thrust into situations that make no sense with no foreshadowing, right? Like, okay, so, of course, there's this underlying story about people wanting to understand the secret behind Merida, you know, what is her true identity, what is her true class, and whatnot. So, of course, the situation that we see there is conceivable. I'm not saying that that's illogical. Now, however, typically with these kinds of things, you need to set up to reach this kind of situation, right? You don't just get thrust into this and then all of a sudden, hey, we're the entire, you know, all of the people who have a grudge against you are here, and we are now trying to make this into a trial. And like, what? I mean, if you want to be a completely random series and do that, of course you can do. But the thing with Assassin's Pride is it's not entirely one of those wacky, off-the-wall series, right? So it tries to maintain some sense of seriousness within it. But then you have situations like this, and I'm just like, what in the world, right? And then, to make matters worse, the characters do things out of the blue. For instance, in last episode, we suddenly see the appearance of William Ginn, right? The antagonist within the first few arcs. And then suddenly he turns into a friend, you know, he's cooperating with Kufa, with no prior acknowledgement or information whatsoever. He just suddenly shows up and suddenly they're friends, right? And he's on a good side now. And perhaps even more damning in this particular arc would be Mulu, right? So I already made this entire spiel about, you know, a few arcs ago when we were first introduced to Mulu and Salasha, you know, how they all of a sudden became friends real fast, right? But we were never actually seeing, you know, why they become friends. And then all of a sudden they just suddenly disappeared as well, and then they reappear, and then suddenly it seems that their relationship had reset here, right? So for Mulu in particular, right? She was friends, and then she suddenly turned into enemies again, and then at the very end here, for no reason at all, she turned to Merida's side again. Like, I did kind of predict that Mulu in the very end would go to Merida's side, right? Like, that much is obvious. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. The point is, to make that transition, you need to show things leading up to it. You don't just put it out there just like that, right? You need to have the logical steps there in order to make it a coherent and smooth story, and that is not what it is as we see it right here, right? Now, beyond the story part and the characters and how they act and whatnot, the animation was also quite atrocious, right? Like, it's honestly, like, okay, I don't know how to sugarcoat it. It's just bad, right? It's just bad. You know, I was really thinking, okay, this is the finale here. They're probably going to pour more of their budget and time into this. They're at least going to make it have a lasting impression at the very end here. So whatever faults that we may find, at least it's going to be washed away somewhat with this final episode, right? But no. I feel like seriously, the only time the animation was actually good was perhaps in the first arc and maybe in the first episode. Beyond that, it basically went completely downhill. Now, with that being said, let's look at some of the good points of this episode, right? So, at the very least, the dialogue was a little bit better here than it was throughout the series, right? The stuff that Merida was actually saying, you know, her speech that she was making actually made sense logically, and it was worded properly. It had an impact there, right? Then again, I do feel like they kind of overused the sort of epic music in the background and whatnot. It didn't really fit the tone that she was doing and the actions that she was making, right? The scene, the animation was not epic enough to be paired with the music that was being used there. But still, at the very least, the dialogue didn't really make me want to, like, cringe, right? Or roll my eyes. So it's got that going for it. It didn't feel as artificial, right? And of course, at the very end there, it was nice to see her finally being acknowledged by the one person that matters to her the most, her father, right? So at least we get something wholesome there, and I applaud them for including that part, right? But no, that was a logical thing to include there, right? But nonetheless, we are trying to look at the positive points here, right? Okay. So let's talk about the series as a whole. And really, the series as a whole just suffers from the exact same problems, right? The storyboarding and the dialogue. And honestly, I'm kind of at a loss as to which one is worse, right? So let's talk about the storyboard first. Again, it's very eccentric, and with the one exception of the arc where we go through Rossetti's backstory, right? That was an actual arc where I feel like we had a good logical progression there. There was a mystery that they were trying to solve, so there were parts that were hidden, if you will, but those were actually points that we needed to solve and we need to figure out ourselves, and they were later explained. You know, the gaps within the story there were properly explained at the very end there as part of the mystery, right? So that was the one arc where I felt the entire plot had a cohesion to it and it actually flowed nicely. Beyond that, though, most of it was exactly like this last arc here, where things just appear out of nowhere, happen out of nowhere, we get enemies out of nowhere, and that is that, right? So, really, they need to work a lot better on the storyboarding and let it have logical consistency. And the next part would be the dialogue, right? And this is a problem from the very first episode. The dialogue is just, I hate to say this word, but it's just cringy. It's just cringy. Honestly, it feels like it's been written by fanfiction writers, and not the good ones too, because there are actually some good fanfiction out there. I'm talking about the bad ones. You know, maybe it was their first fanfic or something, and they don't really know how to do dialogue, or English is maybe not their first language or something like that, or maybe they are of a younger age, they don't have as big a vocabulary, and so on and so forth. It's just, of course, this is translated, right? So potentially it could be that the original Japanese is a little bit better than it was here, but somehow I highly doubt that. I highly doubt that. And so yeah, the dialogue and the storyboarding, right? Now, typically when you have both these things, my first instinct is to blame the scriptwriter, right? Because a lot of adaptations suffer from bad scriptwriting. But with that being said, I looked it up, and apparently the lady that is the scriptwriter for this series, she has some quality works under her belt, right? On her resume. So she has the good. She knows what to do here. It's not like she's a novice or something, or she only worked on bad works, right? It doesn't seem to be the case here. So potentially we need to blame the author. But again, I hesitate on that because we don't really know anything. I mean, I don't know anything about that. I've never read the original light novels, or yeah, I believe they're light novels, right? So I can't really attest to whether or not that is the situation. Now, with that being said, I do have a feeling that we can maybe pinpoint the problem here with another thing that this series is lacking, and that is in the animation part, right? So, like I said, the first episode had decent animation, and then really throughout the entire series, you know, it had a few peaks. It had a few peaks, but the overall trend was going downwards, right? And there actually is an explanation for this, because there were some tweets that were tweeted a few months earlier by the chief of animation for this series, where I believe it's a lady as well, and she mentioned that while working on Assassin's Pride, they did not have enough time to go through quality checks, right? So, and there was not really a lot of cohesion going on. There wasn't really someone who took care of the entire situation, and I believe the lady who was working on this, she got transferred to another project, and so potentially Assassin's Pride's animation team suffered from a lack of personnel and from a lack of leadership. And so this got me thinking that the real culprit behind this series being the way it is might just be a matter of budget and time. Right, so you don't have enough budget, you can't hire enough people to work on it, and you don't have enough time, so all of the people who are working on it need to work on very, very rushed products, right? And that is, of course, going to impact the final product here. And specifically, time is something that actually plays a much larger role than most people realize. A lot of people, when they see something is animated badly or whatnot, they say, they didn't have the budget to spend on this. But a lot of times it's actually time. You can give a quality studio, you can hire the best people. If you don't give enough time, the final product will still be shit, right? So I do think that this perhaps suffered from this kind of situation as well. You know, just trying to find some excuses for it, right? Other than that, the actual, you know, the actual story of it, right? Personally, I'm sort of impartial to the premise of it. I'm kind of meh towards the entire thing, but like I kept on saying, the thing that drew me into the series in the first place is in the setting of it and the aesthetics, right? So I did like how they had this sort of class system where they have you know, they have ranks and roles as well, and they each specialize in their own powers. Unfortunately, we didn't really get to see that much of it being utilized here. Like we rarely saw any class specific advantage. Well, we did see class-specific advantages, particularly for stuff such as the Joker, or in this episode, we see the Dragoon is able to fly, right? So we did see stuff like that, but it wasn't featured as prominently as it could have been. Especially when you go to Wiki and you see that it has, the class system is really reminiscent of an RPG, where each different class has its strong attributes and its weak attributes, right? So one might be more focused on power, one is more focused on speed, one is more focused on agility, that kind of thing. I wish that they could have played out on this a little bit more here. And the aesthetic is definitely something very interesting, right? It's sort of dark in a sense, but it's not. It's a pretty bright story, at least tone-wise. But it had a lot of interesting artwork going for it, right? A lot of interesting scenarios, a lot of interesting... You know, the world of Assassin's Pride is interesting. It's just the story and the current characters that we're seeing here don't quite make up for... or don't really utilize this setting to its fullest potential. And so, there we go. That is what I think about Assassin's Pride, episode 12, and the series as a whole. Again, I'm sorry if you are a fan of this series, and I have to say this to you, but, like, come on. Sometimes we gotta be honest to ourselves here, right? This is not a very good anime, no matter which way you look at it. But... well, hopefully, I guess, for some people, maybe this is enough to draw them to go read the original light novel, right? And if that was the case, then maybe it would have accomplished its goal, which in this case, with this sort of adaptation, is mostly just to get people interested in the franchise and go buy the light novels, right? So, there we go. Thank you guys for watching so far. This is Mavry, and feel free to check out my other works as well. I typically don't do this type of anime, this type of setting, but, you know, just check it out, right? I do a lot of different things here. And, well, I guess an early Happy New Year's to all you guys. So, have fun, stay safe. This is Mavry, signing off. Bye-bye.